And I expect that the Judiciary Committee is going to devote most of our time this spring working to pass comprehensive immigration reform. Few topics are more fundamental to who we are as a nation than immigration. Immigration throughout our history has been an ongoing source of the renewal of our spirit and our creativity, our vitality. From the young students who are brought to this country by their parents, seeking a better life for themselves, to the hard-working men and women who play vital roles supporting our farmers, innovating for our technology companies, or creating businesses on their own. Throughout all of them, our nation relies on immigrants. We have to find a way through the partisan gridlock to enact meaningful change in our immigration laws, and that should include a path to citizenship. In tackling this complex issue, let's get away from partisan symbolism. Let's instead uphold the fundamental values of family, of hard work, and of fairness. So next month, we're going to begin this national discussion, the full Senate Judiciary Committee with public hearings. Now, I know I'm going to hear a lot of different views on this, but I hope in the end we can honor those who came before us from distant lands in search of freedom and opportunity. I wonder with the attitude of some today, if when my grandparents came to Vermont from Italy, whether they would have been allowed to become citizens, or my great-grandparents, when they came from Ireland to Vermont, whether they would have been allowed to become citizens, or Marcel's parents, when they came to Vermont from Canada, whether they could have become citizens. You know, we have to remember, we all came in our ancestors or ourselves from somewhere else. And then on an issue that is before the nation, and properly so, and I applaud the President for doing this, is the issue of gun violence. 2 weeks from today, the Senate Judiciary Committee will begin examining possible remedies for tragedies like last month's shootings in Newtown. I believe these will be the first congressional hearings since that happened. And the questions we face about our national gun policy extend beyond the tragic issues of mass murder. They extend to how we care for those with mental illness, how we manage the exposure of children to violence in popular media, and simple matters of gun safety. I hope it's going to be an open forum for a constructive discussion. Again, spare me symbolic arguments. Let's have a constructive discussion about how better to protect our communities from mass shootings or respecting the fundamental rights guaranteed by our Supreme Court. Now, like many other gun owners, I believe that we should strengthen our federal laws to combat gun trafficking. We should ensure that those seeking to purchase guns do so with real background checks. But that's only part of what's needed. As President Obama has made clear, no single step can end this kind of violence. But the fact that we cannot do everything that could help should not paralyze us from doing anything that can help. And in the coming months, we're going to continue to examine our criminal justice system. We're going to work to promote national standards and oversight for forensic labs and practitioners. We're going to have improvements that far more effectively identify and convict people guilty of crimes, but avoiding the all too common tragedy of convicting the innocent. If you have labs that do not give you right results, and you think you can close a case by sending the wrong person to prison, you've done nothing for the safety of people. You've had won the tragedy of having an innocent person in prison, but at the same time you have loose on the streets the person who committed the crime. We all suffer from that. And I think we have to also examine the issues related to our high rate of imprisonment, including the fiscal issues, and mandatory minimum sentences. to make sure that we have approaches that effectively reduce crime and target violent offenders. Let me state, and I say this as a former prosecutor, and I say this as a chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee. I think our reliance at the state and federal level on mandatory minimums has been a great mistake. I'm not convinced it has lowered crime, but I knew that we have imprisoned people who should not be there, and we have wasted money that better spent on other things. I think at the federal level and at the state level, get rid of these mandatory minimum sentences. Let judges act as judges and make up their own mind what should be done. The idea that we protect society by a one-size-fits-all, or the idea that we can do this kind of symbolism to make us safer, it just does not work in the real world. Like so many other worthy efforts, renewing VAWA suffered from obstructionism that has seeped too much into our legislative process. Each of us probably know victims of domestic or sexual violence. I still have nightmares from some of the domestic violence crime scenes I saw when I was a prosecutor in Vermont. And today, as we struggle to overcome these unprecedented obstacles to renewing and improving VAWA, I think of victims like Carmen Tarleton from Thetford, Vermont. Let me tell you this story. Thetford, Vermont is a very small town, as two Vermonters here in the front row know. It's a very safe town, very quiet town. But 5 years ago, Carmen's estranged husband broke into her home, beat her with a baseball bat, threw industrial-strength lye into her face and across her body. Her doctors said that she had suffered the most horrific injury a human being could suffer. It nearly blinded her. Today, she's disfigured and still in pain. Yet she's courageously sharing her experience to help others. And stories like Carmen's remind me of this. Every day that we do not pass the VAWA, the Violence Against Women Act bill, comes at a human cost. And I have one message. For those who say that we should not pass it because we included others, we included members of the LGBT community, we included Native Americans, we included immigrants in there, so thus we should not pass it. I have never seen a police officer at a crime scene say, well, before we can do anything about this person who's been beaten, perhaps to death, we must make sure the person is straight, the person is an American, the person is not a Native American. No. A victim is a victim is a victim. And we should stop setting up standards that say we'll have one standard of law enforcement for one group of victims, but not for another. I thank you. We also have to, in the Judiciary Committee, continue to exercise oversight when it comes to our nation's counterterrorism efforts to protect the civil liberties of all Americans. We'll examine the constitutional and legal issues implicated by the administration's use of drones abroad, but my concern goes beyond the lethal force used against suspected terrorists. I am concerned about the growing use of drones by federal and local authorities to spy on Americans here at home. This fast emerging technology is cheap, but I think just because it's available doesn't mean it helps us. I think there could be a significant threat to the privacy and civil liberties of millions of Americans. So just because we have the technology that allows us to spy on each other, let's not forget we have certain basic constitutional rights as Americans. And in a fast-changing, technologically changing world, let's not lose sight of the plan that we should follow. It's not a plan of code or written into a computer program. It's a plan that is written in our Constitution. And that should be the one thing we follow. We make a tragic mistake. We think that merely giving up more and more of our privacy is going to make us safer. It will not. Security and liberty are both essential in a free society. You can't forsake one for the other.